Hey, how's it going? So, this is about squaring the circle. Now, my explanation of this concept is not the only explanation there is. This is not saying definitively this is what this means. It's just a convenient symbolic vessel for a large idea that is being quantified down to a simplified understanding. So, that's all this is. You can look at this from all manner of different perspectives, and whatever perspective you have is perfectly valid. It's all subjective anyway. But with that disclaimer out of the way, what do I mean by squaring the circle? So, this in the middle is the spiral, the symbolic representation of the endless spiraling entropic pattern of reality. We can be at any point along this axis. It doesn't really matter. It does, but it doesn't. Because it all happens over and over again, and then until you escape, it's, the time is relative. So let's say you're here, or you're here. Let's see. In fact, let's see. Can I draw on it? Yep, I sure can. Okay, so so let's say you're right here. You know what I mean? Which is about where I believe we are. Here's what we'll do. We'll just go ahead and open up Paint directly. Yeah, we'll just open it. Stick with me here. Stick with me. Okay. So, squaring the circle. What do I mean by that? Alright, we're ready to rock. So, let's say we're right here. That's where we are. Right near the bottom of the drain. That's a conservative estimate. I'd say with, all quantified, data taken into account, all the circumstances we're currently under, and, given biblical revelation, and it's, just everything considered, say we're more like here, like right on the edge of going down the drain again. Now this is not to say that the apocalypse is coming around the next corner. The apocalypse is always coming around the next corner. It always has been and always will be. And at least, in this place. So take that with a grain of salt. This is not an estimate of time or an estimate of when exactly. This is just a symbolic reference of what we're currently going through. So, let's say we're right here, okay? When we reach this point, the end point, it's supposed to end. Like, it's supposed to be done with. The judgment comes, people pass away, and we're able to meet God, and we're able to get through this and get past this. But that's not what happens, is it? It's clearly not what happens. It's clear that there have been many iterations of this. I would surmise, based on biblical reference, based on my own, experience, my own discernment, it's been quite a few at this point. Countless, It's pointless to quantify it. Endless. Let's say it's been an endless, ad infinitum cycles, Where we start off anew at the beginning, and we slowly circle back down to that end point. But what happens? What happens right here? Well, this outer box that it's contained within is that's really the image that we're in right now. We're not in the actual event, like the original actual event, the objective world as we know it. We're in a copy of that world, a simulation. So, to put it in a way that's easy to understand, relatively, let's say you were in a dream, and then you went to sleep in the dream right before you woke up, and you went into another dream, and then you did that about 5,000 times, and now you're here, and this is the dream. That's what I mean. Now, the means by which that occurs is, up to debate. It's really, not really important, although it's interesting to consider, and I believe I have a few theories on how that goes. So one of them right here, I have listed just virtual simulations. if you watch the news, which I don't mean the news like CNN or something. I mean just if you just look at what's going on, supposedly what they have going on. I don't mean what they have in secret, what they've always had. They've always had this technology. It's always been here. The artificial intelligence has been present since the dawn of man. In my opinion, it has always been here and it always will be. It's the running force of the world. Because you got to think, let's say originally we reached a point where we had an artificial intelligence, machine intelligence like Terminator, that was so vastly intelligent and strategic beyond our means, but yet was still controlled and guided at a higher point by actual people, that its general directive could be set. And the people who set this general directive had the motivation to continue on their existence and the existence of all those with them here in the simulation ad infinitum, because they did not wish to face judgment for their actions. When I say this is a virtual simulation, it does not mean it's meaningless and that nothing you do here has meaning. That's not what I'm implying. Virtual simulation just means it is not the real world. You, however, live here. You're paying attention to it. And so things you do here have weight in the spiritual sense, because you spiritually are focusing in on this experience. So therefore, change does occur spiritually through this medium. And so if you watch my last video about perspective, God does all these things for a purpose. And so this whole situation has a purpose to it. But I also believe that it needs to reach an end. That's not even what I say, that's what God says. God says it will reach an end. And so there is an end to it. But understanding where we came from, it is good, because essentially you can prophesize the future by understanding the past. If all of these things that happen, this entire cycle has the same notes to it as the previous one and the one before it, all the way up into the beginning, then you can essentially predict the future by understanding where you are on the spiral, where you are on the timeline of events, and then looking forward and seeing what happens at the end. So, based on my estimate, what happens at the end of this cycle is basically what we would call the apocalypse. The mass extinction of all life on the planet. All the way down from humans to animals, or it could be mass enslavement. To me, the way I see it going right now, and the way I think it's been, is, a supposed singularity of technology, as if there's been a development, which, like I surmised earlier, I don't believe there has been any such development. It simply has always been there, and they reveal it piece by piece. With that being said, I feel like we're all going to be dragged, or, we'll be given a choice. You're always given a choice on what to do. The choice may be difficult. It may be hard to make that choice, because you as an individual are given the choice, let's say, between dying or having your life put into a virtual simulation, or your soul put into a virtual simulation. Now, There is no such thing as them taking your soul and then putting it into a simulation. That's not possible. What is possible, however, is them convincing you so thoroughly that that is possible that you manifest it all of your own accord. And in fact, that's the only way that things get done in this world, is by taking your attention, you personally, a real living being with the spirit of, one true God living within you, and directing your attention to things, and then having you internalize those beliefs, and then by internalizing them, you simultaneously externalize that belief into the outside environment. That is how you are controlled, and that is how reality is manifested, is through you. You, the person, the dreamer, the person within the virtual simulation, auto synchronize the environment with your internal beliefs. And so the problem with that is we've been sucked so far down the cycle that our ability, our discernment, and our ability to determine our own beliefs and our own wants has been corrupted so badly that it is nigh impossible to pick out our most dug in beliefs through, however long we've been alive here. To stop on that point and explain that for a moment, what I mean by however long we've been alive. If things went their course, we would not still be here. We would be, we would be dead. We would be in the other place, in heaven, with God. Whatever happens, that God says there will be a place for us after we pass on. There will be a judgment, and apparently, we're still here. So there hasn't been a judgment. There is one yet to come. And I believe the decision is not as like a whole. I don't believe humanity as a whole makes the decision to go or to stay. I believe it is an individual thing, and people can get out one by one as time goes on. When the opportunity presents itself at the end of the cycle, you can choose to not go down to the next iteration. But out of a millennia of trauma, brainwashing, mind control, and just general MK Ultra nonsense, you have been trained like a dog to follow along with the plan, because so long as one conscious being still exists in this place, it shall continue to manifest. And so without your conscious awareness, there can be no creation. There can be none of this. None of this can happen without you. If everyone leaves, this just collapses in on itself. It doesn't exist. It's like when you're not looking at something, it doesn't exist. Even if on a scientific stance, I'm sure you've seen the experiment where when you observe a particle, it changes its behavior. All of the world goes with how you go. And it's a collective experience. So, it's a varying degree of weight. And I believe right now there's only a few people left to cycle down. And if we do a good job, and if we get everybody on board here, we can all leave this time. And we don't have to do this again. And that's the whole point of what I'm doing. That's why I do this channel. That's why I speak to people. That's why I encourage people, encourage being emotional, connective communication, breaking free of that mind control on every level so that you are not compelled to continue this existence if you do not wish to. If you wish to continue on, there's no one that's going to be there to stop you. God is not going to stop you. I am not going to stop you. In fact, that behavior will be encouraged. So, I didn't mean to have a sarcastic tone there. Everyone's choice is their choice, and I don't shame you if you would like to go through that process. However, I believe deep down in your heart that it wouldn't be the best for you. It wouldn't be the best to continue on this life, this existence. At least me personally, I don't want to. And so I have it here. Like I said, this is the copy in the Xerox. So as it gets copied, we're like 5,000 copies down now. You know that when you copy something in a printer, that the quality is degraded from the original. And if you copy it again, it's further degraded. You copy again, and it's further degraded and degraded and degraded until it's, basically unrecognizable. And so, what's really happened, in all essence, is that it takes a single part of the cycle. Not this part. I say it's this part that it's copied over and over. It takes a snapshot of this part and blows it up again. So it blows it up again like this into its own little doodad, to its own little existence like this. And so you have the cycle all over again. You have like that little part, and now it appears to you that there's a whole other cycle, but in reality it's just the same part playing out over and over again. And it gets quicker and quicker and quicker and quicker. And so you notice, I don't know if you noticed this or if this is present in your own life, like time seems to be going faster and faster and faster. Well, it's like the gravitational pull of the quote unquote the end is becoming more evident as we get closer to the edge of it, like a black hole, And so as we draw closer into that ultimate conclusion, it pulls us in on a temporal scale closer and closer to that thing. And then, as you can see, things are ramping up as far as the weirdness and all the bullshit. Things are ramping up rapidly, which I don't hate to say it. I don't mean to be rash or to be dramatic, but I'm kind of excited about it, to be perfectly honest with you. I'm tired of this bullshit. I'm tired of it all, and I'm not suicidal or anything. I'm ready for this to be over. And so seeing the signs that God may be returning and bringing us all to judgment, I'm just like, oh God, like breathing a sigh of relief, like please, come on with it. I'm ready. God, come back. I'm ready for you, bud. I'm ready for all this to come to an ultimate conclusion, for better or worse. At least we'll have a resolution to the situation. So, just to focus in on a little bit of it, there is another concept I wish to talk about, and that's the externalization of the entire external memory of the human race. The entire external memory of the human race is like a lattice, like a web, like the internet, And as you look at things and as you bring yourself in a closer connection to God and you look at things, you have to start noticing. You will start noticing that things that you see will line up with like the truth. And it'll begin to feed you information through the external environment. Me personally, it's been happening through video games. I've been kind of distracted lately playing video games, but it's been a very informative process because God is, through the storylines and the acted out experience of the video games. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but just stick with me here. God speaks in mysterious ways, just to put it simply. And he speaks to me through the video games because that's what I'm focusing on. So that's where the truth will be, because I ask God for the truth and he's going to give it to me. Ask and you shall receive. So he's shown me the truth about a lot of these things. And a revelation that I had tonight, and the reason why I'm making this video, is that it's all just people. It's all people. In the television shows and the animes and the movies, you see all these monsters and these demons and these aliens. It's all just people. And how is a crazy psycho demon with 2 mouths and 5 horns like eating someone? How is that a person? Well, I suppose you really couldn't consider them to be in the sense of a conscious, aware being, but there is one still down in there somewhere, through genetic engineering. That is the big elephant in the room here. That is how all of this gets done. And by genetic engineering, I mean altering your DNA to bring you down a different path line. And you can already see that happening today through, CRISPR and all the artificial intelligence now being used to decode the human DNA to make alterations to it. What kind of genetic engineering alterations could you see such a perverse and depraved society as ours, given a million years out in some simulacra space simulation, for example? What if we went to some simulation, hypothetically? You know, I'm not saying this is the truth, but let's just say this happened. That you were sent out into a simulation with unlimited technological power and unlimited ability to change yourself and to have all these crazy scenarios play out through that. What would such a depraved society as ours come up with? Well, you could turn into demons, you could turn into animals, turn to half human, half animals, and come back 5 million years later into the reborn earth, into the new cycle that you've, copied as the new gods. And you would appear so because you have been genetically altered and have such insane technology that you appear as gods to the primitive natives that exist in the new simulation that you've created. Just the theory, Let's say, I was watching an anime called Guts, or well, it's not called Guts. That's the main character. It's called Berserk. Another anime I'd recommend is Neon Genesis Evangelion, or a Gospel for a New Age. It's quite a fitting title for it. I recommend you watch that if you want to see, some information that I've been privy to. Kind of look at it with your own eyes. But anyway, watching Berserk, and there's a scene where the guy gets, I can't remember the exact circumstances of how he got there, but he's trapped in some crazy demon realm with all his soldiers, and he has to fight. And like there's all these crazy demons and one crazy head demon with the big brain, and he's like, it's really gory and nasty. I shouldn't be watching this stuff, but I was. And so I got something out of it, thankfully. Thank God. I'm sorry, God, that I watched it. But anyway, it was really gory, and it occurred to me that all these demons and this crazy demon guy, that's all possible through genetic engineering. And so it's like if you were in a new simulation and that, let's say you're like 5 down, you're not too far from the source, and there's a lot of things that are still possible, And by that I mean the quality of the simulation is not degraded. And I believe the quality of the simulation is manifest through the meaning of the lived experience. Originally, the first few simulations, you may have been fighting demons with a big sword, with your wife and having to defend her, and it would be like an anime. And so these anime, the whole demon thing and aliens and all that, is really just a retelling of things that actually happened, backed up through the cycles in the simulations. The people who run this place, since they are the ones who control and create the copy of the simulation, they would have a simultaneous memory through it. They would have control over that. That's what I surmise. And we would not, since we're not privy to this, obviously. Otherwise, we would have done something about it at this point, but we've just been a participant to some degree. However, there's another theory, is that you were one of those people and have been through one of the cycles and are finally getting around, thank God, to just being a normal person and getting a chance to get out of this place. That kind of ties into the concept of original sin. Like, you in some previous cycle were the crazy demon lord tearing people apart with your horde of genetically engineered demonic people, and playing out some sick power fantasy. And so that's why you have to let go of the trauma and the ego of that, and you have to heal, That's not to say that you're irredeemable or that you're going to be sent to hell. Frankly, being some kind of space overlord, crazy alien man in a simulation for a million years, and that kind of horrific sci-fi scenario that we've likely lived out in person, that sounds a lot like hell to me. Does it not? It sounds a lot like hell to me. So maybe we are still there in some present form, or were there and have already experienced it, and we are now getting out of it. This is the outro. We're getting out of hell at this point. We're just normal people living normal lives, you know? And so all of the crazy animes and science, sci-fi experiences were all at one point things that really happened, and the collective memory of them is manifest to the art that we, not say we, whoever makes this stuff, makes it. And it's like, because you're looking at it, it auto manifests that memory into it. So you're reading your own memory through the external environment because your internal memory is not large enough to hold that much information. And so it has to be accessed at bit by bit. It has to be accessed when needed. It's like a search bar. When you ask God for a certain piece of information, there's a certain piece of information that's poignant to the situation that you're in. It will be presented to you in a circumstantial way that may seem non-coincidental to the actual asking of the information, but it actually is. So it's like you would ask God, I want to know how we got to this point. And then when I ask that question, suddenly I go down this whole rabbit hole and I get distracted and I get away from things and I think things are bad. But really what's happening is that God is giving me this information in the way that I can digest it. And so he's creating a circumstance that allows me to have this information and believe it. So with the whole genetic engineering, virtual simulation thing, that's like how it plays out. But the big picture here is that it's just a simulation altogether. And that none of this is real. It's an illusion. Material reality is an illusion. And so all of this has produced trauma because you as a soul, lived being, regardless of the realness or the illusion of it, still have trauma from these events. If you were sat in front of a TV and you could see nothing else for a million years and you had constant traumatic experiences pumped into your eyes, you would still have trauma from that, even if it wasn't quote unquote real. And so that's the same as this. Even though it wasn't real per se in the objective sense, it was real enough to where you could feel, touch, smell, experience it in a vivid way, like a dream, and then have a real effect on your soul. And that's ultimately what it's about. Satan, whatever you want to call it, the thing that runs this place is spiteful towards you in a sociopathic kind of like vengeful way. At least that's how it is on some level. It wants you to suffer like it does. And it wants you in the simulation with it so it has someone to torture. Because you at some, in some previous iteration might have tortured it. And so it like just goes round and round in a big spiral where everybody hurts each other because someone else hurt each other in the past. So it's like, to end that cycle, like, that all this is, it's like sin brought to its ultimate conclusion. To end that cycle, you have to get rid of sin. You have to let go of that hatred, that judgment, that vengefulness. You have to let go of the past altogether. You can't consider it. You shouldn't consider it when dealing with people in your own life, because by manifesting that attitude through your actions, you'll be able to manifest it into the external environment and thusly be able to end the cycle by manifesting the fact that you have let go of that vengefulness and that this complete reiteration of the cycle is no longer necessary. So there never was any alien entities or demons or anything like that. Well, I don't mean like there's none of that. I'm just saying, like, since we live in a simulation, anything that's produced by the simulation is produced by the creators of the simulation. And since the simulation is not in its original form, is made by God, there are people in control of it. And so whether it's just an actual person that's been transformed to some sort of monstrous, like, altered state, or it's just a byproduct of some other, crazy experimentation with wildlife, it doesn't matter. It's all at the hand of an individual or individuals. And so just remember that, be humble. Be humble to the fact that you don't judge even the worst people, because you likely may have been just as bad or even worse at some point in the past. Whether you remember it or not. Look deep within yourself and ask yourself, do you feel like you have the capacity for those kinds of acts that you may have seen in media, the kind of mass mind control, destruction that you see today? If given the reins of power, do you feel like there's a 0% chance of you going through that? If you feel like there is a 0% chance, voila, that's good. I'm not saying that's bad, but for most people, I feel like that's not a 0% chance. And thank God that we've been put into circumstances where we could heal and we're not at the constant beratement of unlimited corrupting power, So, that was part one. I know it's kind of all over the place. I'm going to make a part two soon just to kind of clean things up a bit. If you have any questions, just place them in the comments and I'll be sure to explain further. God bless, guys. You have a good night.